welcome to Feature Fridays. My name is Guy Bartram. I'm Director of Product Marketing for our cloud service providers in Broadcom. And today I'm joined by Lewis. Welcome, Lewis. Why don't you just give a brief intro, who you are, what you do?
Thanks. So my name is Lewis. I'm a business developer now. I've been a product manager in the cloud provider space for 7 years-ish, somewhere in there. Been known as the usage meter guy or licensing person, whatever you want to call it. I've been around this program itself for 10 years or a little more than 10 years, but specifically supporting partners with metering, licensing, entitlements, bringing VCF and bringing products to market. So today we're here to talk about Usage Meter 9.
Yeah, right. So let's start the big question, right? There's been a couple of shifts in dates recently. We can't actually put a date on this, so we're going to say just coming soon, right?
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no
It's
worries.
okay.
But it is what it is. But I think this is really important for providers because they are going to have to upgrade to 9, right? And that's
Yeah.
going to be a massive push, and they're probably going to have a short time scale to do it in, and that's purely for compliance. And I'm guessing we're going to touch on that a little bit later.
Yeah. So yeah, Usage Meter 9 is coming out. It's also joined with a new portal. And so we're going to go through a little bit of both, but it's joined with a new portal to access and manage registrations and reports. And once this stuff is released, the portal everybody will get access to, but the usage meters have to get upgraded within 90 days. So here we're going to kind of we're going to do a little review of obviously metering overview, go back into kind of what are the components and what's everything that works and how it works.
Sure.
We're going to talk a bit about the business services console because it matters. It's the cloud component of metering, and it is changing. And then we'll get into Usage Meter 9 and the two main things that are coming up, which is authentication and vDefend, which is support for vDefend and on-demand reporting of that products.
Okay, cool. Let's dive into it.
All right. So for those who are just getting into a cloud provider or the CCM, what used to be called aggregators, there are a couple of different components or pieces that make metering and billing work. Obviously, you have products that you deploy and license keys that you entitle and activate on those products.
Mm-hmm.
But for a consumption model program, you have a tool called Usage Meter in our program, Usage Meter, which collects product usage information and it ships it to the cloud. And then in the cloud, we turn that into usable functional reports that are then handled by finance to determine, are you using at or below your commit, in which case you just pay your commit, or if you're using above your commit, in which case you pay on an hourly basis, essentially, you pay for how much more you used above the commit on an hour by hour basis.
And Lewis, just to quick, actually, we're going to get into it sort of now, so I'll just ask you the question. So traditionally, Usage Meter always transmitted the usage data to the Cloud Console. There was also the option to do offline. Is that still available?
No. So
Okay.
all of metering now requires it to be online. There is no offline capabilities in the Broadcom finance flow.
Okay.
Part of that is a lot of that has to do with timing, especially with the issues we had in the past. Because you'd upload like a month's worth of data at a time, all that entire tech stack that supported that is gone. And so now it is 100% automated, or you're not metering, and basically you're not in the program.
Yeah. So we're not waiting to like day 15 before we can actually work out what's going on now.
No.
It's like day one. We know straight away. Okay. But do
Yeah,
providers have the chance to change any of the data like they used to?
no. So the whole thing is completely automated, but part of that is made more possible by the fact that this is a lot simpler licensing model, right? Cores is
Yeah.
a lot easier than VRAM was because it wasn't, oh, I had a specific kind of key and I had choices of, oh, I put the wrong key in the wrong place and it caused a VM to show up under, say, perpetual or something, or move
Yeah.
things around. We're a lot less mixed now. We're a lot more simple core-based program, and those license keys actually are used in routing the usage to the right bill. So by activating that host with a key from that contract, the usage of that host will go to the contract.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
And so to kind of go back into that, to kind of go further into that, if I license a product and say, and I'll use the red in here in a second to kind of cover other use cases, but a product is licensed with a key, usage meter collects it and sends it. What used to be called usage insight doesn't really technically have a name. It's just kind of a feature in the portal, really. And that gets turned into two reports, hourly usage report and virtual machine history report. The virtual machine history is kind of like a more supplementary file for the partner. It says, these are the list of VMs and the intervals of time that they were powered on. You can see information like the host it was connected to or running on, and you can see things like how many cores that host has, but also what's the billable cores. This is where you first get to see the 16 core minimum per CPU. This is each row represents a period of time that a usage of VM is powered on. So you're going to see a lot of like duplicate entries of a host. But that's because many VMs powered on, power off kind of thing, all that churn that you do.
Yeah.
But the file that matters for billing is the hourly usage. And this is basically the number of cores that we saw, billable cores that we saw per hour per license key. Again, the license key is how we determine where to send the usage. Once that report is processed, it's sent to Broadcom Finance. They aggregate the usage based on keys from the same contract. So they put all the usage per hour for the same contract together, and they turn that into one number. And then they validate whether those and they also validate whether the key is part of a contract or not. If it's not, we drop the usage. If it is part of a contract, we send the usage on to the bill relative to the contract.
Right.
And then there are two reports after the fact, which is from finance. One's called you're obviously on-demand invoice. This is what you pay in arrears because you're paying for your commit up front, either on a 3-year basis, 1-year basis, whatever you signed for. And then you pay for on-demand usage in arrears. And the second file for that is the consumption usage detail report. And this comes from the CCM, or if you're direct, to get it direct. And that is the number of cores per hour total for the contract and relative to the commit, right? So what's my usage of cores versus the commit cores shows you the on-demand amount. And then for the version, and when you go to look at this from the perspective of like a cloud provider getting it from CCM will have review the file, and it'll have like your CCM, the contract rate with the CCM, that is, what's my core cost per hour and what's my total on-demand cost for that hour. And then if you just sum all the hourly on-demand, that should be the same as your on-demand invoice.
Right.
Now, as I said before, usage is routed based on the license keys. So if I have a bunch of customer commits, or I have an aggregate commit, or maybe a mix of both, go back. The license key tells us where to send the usage. So that host goes through, and it can be through the same usage meter. It doesn't really matter. The usage meter is just collecting information. The usage meter supports like 100 vCenter servers at a time. It's the license key that tells us where that usage is going to go. So unlike in the past where we registered a usage meter against a particular contract and said all usage goes here, that's not the case anymore. It's a license key sends basically directs the usage to the right bill. And that's why when you look at like the HUR, there's a license key and a cores per hour per key.
So the critical thing here is license keys. They must be VCF license keys, Broadcom license keys. Otherwise, they won't get metered. Correct. With usage meter 9.
Yeah, so to kind of put back an example, in this example here, I could have a permissions issue on vCenter server where I did not give usage meter, the user that I gave the usage meter from vCenter. If it doesn't have global licenses, the middle 3 sections of the license key will be all pound signs. That's not a full readable key, so that gets dropped. So it has to, not only does it have to be a fully readable key with the global licenses permission, it has to specifically be a Broadcom key or a Broadcom generated key. So all your prior VCPP licenses, any NFRs from back then, any key that isn't a Broadcom generated key from support portal on your contract will not flow through the system and onto your bill.
Okay.
So So on the things that are coming up, right? So that was an overview where, that's how the system works. So here's the stuff that's new. Here's what's coming up and what's changing. So everybody was familiar with the console.cloud.vmware.com. That's where you went to go and register usage meters and do what you needed to do to get access to like things like reports. That's being replaced by vcf.broadcom.com, which will be called the Business Services Console. And what's a little different, and this is going to be it may be a little confusing because there you go. You're going to see the term tenant being used, but in that portal, the equivalent of the old CSP org is a tenant in the new one. A tenant contains things like access to the usage insight service, the features, functions kind of built into that tenant, so you can go and manage your usage meters. It's also going to be where VCF9 allocations or license entitlements are managed. And this is for VCF 9.0 and later only. We will not be moving support portal license management for 8.0 and earlier.
Right.
And then in that tenant has its own user management for the tenant itself and OAuth token management. So your usage meters will be associated within that tenant space. Your tenant is essentially the equivalent of a site ID on the support portal. So when you think about like user management, you want to think about users that have access to the site ID on support portal. Those are the ones you want accessing this tenant. If you have multiple site IDs, you manage multiple site IDs for different parts of your company, maybe different groups, and only people have access to certain tenants, then you would then work out the user management details you need to support those different areas.
Lewis, quick question on the VCF9 allocations. So you mentioned there wouldn't be any prior versions of VCF allocations. What about if you're using just VCF keys, but you're not actually using VCF like most service providers are today? They're in that process of migrating or re-architecting.
So VCF9 actually licenses it differently. It utilizes the operations manager, the ARIA operations manager or VCF operations manager, as kind of a proxy or a key management system. So what you're doing in the new portal is you're registering operations manager within that tenant to be a tool to activate deployments. So it becomes the object that actually is like your local key manager. But it's not an actual license key. It's more like an application certificate or an SSL certificate. It's more like it's like a file. And the thing about this is that when you have operations manager connected to that tenant, what it will do is operations manager will keep that file up to date. It keeps that SSL certificate up to date for you automatically. It will automatically be able to re-get or resubscribe to those allocations and then make sure that they continue operating correctly for your deployments. And so unlike the license key model, you're treating it, it's weird to say like more digitally because the whole thing's digital technically, even the license keys today, but it's more like the feeling of digital compared to what we have today, which is more like scribbling something on a piece of paper and then handing it to something else. And so allocations, where it's different is allocations can be created, deleted, shrunk, expanded. And then you would then assign them to an operations manager, and then that lets you go and then assign it out to hosts and activate hosts. Interesting fact, when you want to shrink your allocation, say you want to make it smaller, you have to do the work to take the host off that allocation to get the number down to where you want the allocation to be first. So once you have deactivated the host, then you can shrink the allocation down to fit that size, and then you move forward.
But you're doing that in the rear ops, right?
You're doing that on the cloud side, actually. In the business services console, it won't let you shrink it until it notices that the allocation is used to that smaller amount first. Like you're only consuming the smaller amount.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So in here we have under license management, where we're going to find the usage metering reports and meter registration. It's going very similar to what we had today. This is just a migration from Cloud Services Portal to here. But you can still, go select the month, the year, select the usage meter name, and you can say all reports or the VMH. And you'll notice there's another one here called the customer hourly usage report. That one is coming as well. I don't have a date for that just yet, but it basically is, if I wanted to create a customer label on a usage meter, it would provide me with a core count breakdown based off of that label. And the interesting thing here is it does support shared hosts. So if a host has multiple labels kind of associated with it at the same time, we look at the density of a customer label based on the vCPU to CPU ratio and the amount of time those VMs are on the host. So I can actually say that this particular customer, even though they're spread across many hosts, maybe even many shared hosts, they're worth X amount of cores because of how dense they are across those hosts for that period of time.
Okay.
Now, under that metering management, you have obviously the usage meter registrations, the ability to then add or remove your usage meters. And then there's a couple extra things that we're having to worry about. And this again goes back to one of the new things in usage meter, which is authentication. So in the past, you would just register a usage meter. And it was kind of like putting an allow rule on a firewall on our cloud side. It says this UUID is allowed to be processed. And that was it. You had to authenticate into the portal. You had to bring that UUID with you. So from a security standpoint, it was a generated ID that was created at the time the usage meter was first powered on. Only that usage meter has it. You bring it to the cloud, you create that firewall rule, and move on. What's changing is that we wanted to further authenticate that stream to make sure that there's an additional layer of security on that. So not only is it just bringing the UUID to the cloud, now you'll also get an access token back. It's essentially an OAuth token that's created on a per usage meter registration basis. So once you bring the UUID, you get your access token, you take it back to the usage meter on a new deployment, and then that lets you go and register products. Now, for the existing usage meters, because there's like 5,000 usage meters that are out there in the wild today, you would be able to basically create or generate a new token. For existing usage meters, you can even regenerate the token if you wanted to, just to create a new one. But for ones that are already existing but don't have a token already generated, you can generate a token. So this is like a 4.8 that's upgrading to 9.0. You would then go and generate an access token, and you'd use that during the upgrade process.
Okay. So this is a manual step that every service provider is going to have to do for every single usage meter for every single environment, and they're going to need to be able to kind of access the internet from that environment or get the OAuth token somehow and copy and paste it into that usage meter configuration during the upgrade or deployment.
Yeah, I mean, more than 85% of partners have less than 5 usage meters, right? So there's not going to be a big task. There's literally maybe one handful of partners who has a significant number of usage meters, and we'll be working with them to try to get this stuff taken care of. Other partners may have like 10, maybe another handful up to about 50. The largest I've seen so far is 200. And so that's obviously a partner that needs a little help. But for most partners, this is not really a very hard step, because we're talking 1 to 2 usage meters for the majority of partners.
Okay.
So again, coming soon, like the usage meter. So this will be released at the same time as the usage meter release. So part of this is, okay, well, there's a new portal. We have to migrate all the things over. The way that we're going to be doing that is we've been obviously pushing for that license key swap. And there's part of that is because a key is tied to a contract, and a contract tied to a site ID, we know what site IDs usage meters are associated with because of the keys that are flowing through them. So as long as there's a single Broadcom key flowing through a usage meter, that usage meter will get associated with a tenant that will be automatically created for the partner in the new portal, and that a tenant org, and then that org will have the users migrated also from the relative CSP org, so that the partners can then access the new portal. They'll have access to their usage meters. They can go and manage them just like they were doing before. and the usage meters will flow over based off of that license key that's flowing through the usage meter. Nothing the partner has to do. So as long as they've done their license key swap, this stuff should be automatic for them. And again, coming soon. There'll be about, from what I'm told, there's will be 2 days where the old portal will go about 2 days before release. The old portal goes into read-only state. We'll then take that as our snapshot for what we're going to migrate over. And then 2 days later, the old portal shuts down. New portal is what's available, and all the users get invitations to the new portal with where they would go and sign in.
Just a quick question, Lewis. If we're moving the portal and we've got these existing usage meters there, and when we do the upgrade, is there any changes to firewall rules or anything else that needs to happen from the service provider's environment?
So far, no. So we're still utilizing the same
DNS.
DNS entry, and we still use that functionality. So basically, that's a URL that can be repointed to wherever we want it to be.
Okay.
Yeah, but if there are any changes that happen in the future because we wanted to use, say, get off the VMware domain, then you'll see that show up. But we'll make sure to have that announcement out to everybody. There is a rule today, which is ums.cloud.vmware.com. That's where usage meter sends all its data. But no, if we do make any changes, you'll see those changes also relative on ports.broadcom.com.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
All right. So what's new in usage meter? Again, 2 major areas. We have the OAuth token, which you'll have to all usage meters during upgrade have to essentially support the token going forward. So during the upgrade process, you go and generate your token. You'll apply it during the upgrade process, and that will authenticate the usage meter going forward. So obviously, access to the portal comes first. Then you perform your upgrade. Then you generate your token. You generate the token. You perform the upgrade, and then you move on. All partners have to have this done within 90 days of release. So it's very important because basically it comes down to security team does not want to have non-authenticated data streams after a certain point, which means that if you don't do the upgrade, your metering will not work. And that becomes a compliance conversation that nobody wants to have.
Yeah.
Separate from this is NSX vDefend. So it'll be the first add-on that we do support for on-demand usage. And that's it's host level granularity. So it's basically relative to that host, or in the case of the gateway firewall, the gateways cores. So we have host physical cores and gateway cores if you're performing any gateway firewall stuff. And then those cores will be then produced as part of the cores per key per hour on the hourly usage report. There is a new product detection guide that kind of supports this, and so I'll show you some of the content that matters from there, actually in here as well. And so from firewall and ATP, as far as how we look at it, right? When it's host related, you'll see host cores. When it's gateway related, you'll see it on the gateway cores checkbox. So a distributed firewall means that I've enabled the host for distributed firewall, and I have a user created DFW rule. Not the default rules, but I've actually done a DFW rule myself. Then that host cores count towards the distributed firewall.
Okay.
Distributed firewall IP fixed, right? So actually, I want to go one more thing. You can also use the DFW applied to. So there is ways to kind of force DFW to kind of hairpin them or pin them to a specific set of hosts. In this case, so you can kind of control your span of that cluster and kind of maintain costs to a specific size. So if you're doing things like affinity rules to kind of keep certain types of VMs that are using certain features like vDefend to a specific set of hosts, there are ways to kind of control this as well. And they've made sure to kind of call these out in the product detection guide. So this is the table from the product detection guide. I just kind of colorized it to make it a little easier. And then same with distributed firewall IPFix, right? So you can add the IPFix profile to non-empty applied to rule. And so these are the different features. And when it's a host core, the 16 core minimum still counts. Now, we have a couple things to call out here. And you'll see these in the notes. So under the notes section, the security intelligence is not individually metered. What that means is that it's not part of the feature meter because we can't connect directly to the application platform or to vDefense security services platform. We're not, usage meter is not connecting out to that component. We're only connecting to NSX Manager. So security intelligence isn't used to determine, host cores or gateway cores. Same with network detection and response, right? You're not connecting out to that platform to go and collect information. We're only connecting it to NSX Manager. And so if you want to look at the full list of features and additions, you can obviously go to the link. This URL is also this is all content from the product detection guide. So you can go there, you can see it in the document as well, and you can click the link to go to see features and additions. Now, usage calculations for things like host cores. So again, hosts are metered on a 16 core minimum per CPU. So if a host is counted, we are still doing that 16 core minimum per CPU with NSX vDefend.
That's where you really need those affinity rules.
Yeah. And then where it's probably a little more tricky is with gateway cores, right? So gateway cores, this goes back to how vDefend is sold, right? vDefend firewall, you purchase 4 cores of vDefend per 1 core of gateway firewall. Now that's a license activation statement, right? If I want to go and commit to the product and I use it to activate my environment, I need to buy 4 cores of licenses to entitle 1 virtual CPU core of gateway firewall. But for the sake of metering, we can see the virtual CPU core. Licensing that has to make the kind of like translation because it's about license activation and you're purchasing something outside of your deployment. It's not like I'm going into NSX and I'm buying it on a marketplace and saying, I want this license key. Oh, I can see what you're doing. You just charge for the 1 vCPU. No, you're buying something in the instance of cores, which is usually considered in physical cores, right? Like physical cores for your physical host, because it's the same license key for gateway versus host. So you buy 4 cores of physical CPU to get 1 virtual CPU core of NSX gateway firewall, but we meter 1 vCPU to 1 core. So when we go to send this information off to billing, we can see it and we show it off as the 1 vCPU core equals 1 core of gateway firewall because it has its own SKU, and then we send it off to billing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
So these are the features. This is probably one of your shorter ones. Metering, it's not like it's that long of a conversation, but these are the features and functions coming in the Usage Meter 9. One thing to note here is, and I'm probably talking to only a couple of partners or a handful of partners here, is if you are running 4.5 or 4.6 Usage Meter, please reach out to VMware first before upgrading. But if you're on 4.7 and 4.8, go ahead and go to 9.0.
Is it a direct jump from 4.7 to 9, or is it stepped?
Yeah.
4.8?
No, it's direct. So you're upgrading direct to 9.0.
Okay.
Obviously, there's going to be some application and OS security patches in there. Those aren't really the highlight of the conversation. The big things, and the thing that we're most worried about, obviously, is authentication. Please get upgraded so you can get authenticated, so metering can continue to work. And then if you're using vDefend, go ahead and upgrade so you can get access to on-demand, so you can start utilizing that to do more burst or offering it to customers who may not have had it before or before commit, so you can start utilizing it and making it a part of your conversations and sales.
Yeah, and remember affinity rules, because if a VM moves onto a host, bam, you're going to get charged for that host.
Right, and if you're going to go ahead and do that, remember, go take a look at, obviously go back to the product detection guide. We call out use the DFW apply to control your span. That's across distributed firewall and gateway firewall. It's going to be per gateway, so you just how many you deploy really matters in that case. But we try to provide at least some amount of leeway or at least flexibility in how you can control that cost. So.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So key actions from a service provider to take from this then is Number one, if you haven't finished your license swap out to Broadcom keys, you need to do that ASAP. Number two, keep an eye out on comms and on the portal and on the blog site for the announcement of the Cloud Console migration and the release of Usage Meter 9.0. From that point, from that day, you have 90 days to complete your upgrade of all your usage meter instances. So if you have lots of different usage meters out there, maybe in white label partners, for example, then start planning now. Preferably you've already been planning, but definitely start planning now. Then when the release is there, you're going to have to, everything should be good in terms of the migration of VCF consoles from orgs to tenants and users and things like that. That should be pretty seamless if you've been reporting on Broadcom keys. That's all going to be good for you, hopefully. And then, yeah, then it's just a matter of doing the upgrade, getting your OAuth keys, and looking at, what you could potentially do with vDefend if you're not doing it already.
Correct. Yeah. And outside of that, the only other announcements I know that are coming up is the license key cap, which is going into effect May 12th, which is after May 12th, you'll have you can only generate as many license keys per product basis per commit. You can only generate up to 200% of what you committed, and then 90 days out after that, it's 125%, which is August 10th. So if you wanted to, if you're above that, if you generated more than that, you'll just be capped. But you'll also have the ability to merge and split your keys, so you can go and regrab those abandoned keys if you like to do keys like to a certain size. You can go capture all the abandoned keys, merge them all together, and just chop up, like ball it up, and then chop up pieces as you need it.
Yeah.
But yeah, but for usage meter, that doesn't affect the usage meter release. It's just only coming up alongside of it. But yeah, once usage meter has been released, 9.0 has been released, you have 90 days. So our partners need to make sure they get on it.
Clock is ticking, man. Clock is ticking. All right, Lewis, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate it. And hopefully our service providers have learned something new today. If you've got any questions, reach out in the email and description, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thanks a lot.
Yep, thank you.